Welcome back to a brand new season of Nurses Doing GAMSAT by ThankFlip. I'm Dr. Tom Forfer, CEO and founder of ThankFlip GAMSAT, and in this episode, well, this is not your average update. This is our GAMSAT State of the Union. And if you're aiming to do the September GAMSAT, what I'm about to share could save you months, if not years, of wasted effort. This exam is shifting. The trends are clear, and if you're serious, you can't afford to ignore this. We're going to break down what happened in the recent March 2025 sitting, what's likely to come up in the September exam. We'll talk about what's working right now in GAMSAT preparation, where you need to be at this stage of your study, and as well as what we're doing to support you to win in September. So this is not the same GAMSAT that you know from a year ago. If you're preparing for September, then if you're not preparing for September, then you're already behind if you're not paying attention. Because and along the way, as I go through all of this, all the resources and images that I'll be sharing are going to be in the show notes. So just before we get into it, you can go to the link in the description or go to thankflipgamsat.com/episode 15. Let's start with what just happened in the March 2025 exam, because March taught us a lot, and it told us that ACER is doubling down on thinking, not just knowledge. And if you're still treating Section 3 particularly like a uni exam where you're memorizing formulas and definitions and just doing practice questions, then you're going to get burnt. Overall, here are some of the changes or the situation of the actual exam, and then we'll talk about each section and what's happened in the recent exam. So if you're not aware, some of these you might be aware of. So the exam is now 100% digital. It's done on a computer, on a screen. The format changed last year, but it's been the same this year in the sense that we used to do the GAMSAT, like I said, on a piece of paper, on all three sections on the same day. Everyone in the country did it on the same day. But now it's changed where you do it online as a digital exam, but you also do it over 2 sittings. So you do the essay section first. You're going to do that in the upcoming exam. I'll come through I'll cover the timeline a little bit later. But you're going to do that first at home on your computer. Then 2 or 3 weeks later, you're going to do sections 1 and 3 on a computer in a computer lab decided on by ACER. And that's how the exam has been done over the last year and a half, and it's going to be the same for September. Now, the other thing is that your GAMSAT score lasts for 4 years now in Australia. It used to be 2 years, but it's now 4 years in Australia. It's still 2 years in the UK. Other big changes that there is a new medical school accepting GAMSAT, which is University of Tasmania. Now, this is relatively new, where they came in about 2 years ago, and in GAMSAT, well, that is pretty new. But there is a new one coming out. They tried to open up last year. They had a few issues, but they're pushing to open up this year, and that's in the Northern Territory. But we'll email you guys more about that as it comes up. Here are the changes that we've seen in each section from 2024, the March exam 24 to 2025. So let's go in each section at a time. Have a listen to me, and then you can read what's on the screen. But firstly, for section 1, there was an increase in the inference-heavy passages, so more abstract reasoning than narrative interpretation, which makes the exam harder than a lot of the ACER sample questions that you're going to get from the actual ACER exam. Well, that's kind of what we've heard people say. So that's my opinion as well. But facts, you got to find your own. But that's what we've seen, and that's what we've noticed. People also, the other thing that's important to understand here is that the paper is different for each person. So if you do the exam, you do section 1, your mate might get different questions, or they most likely will get different questions. So you can't kind of compare. It's not apples and apples. They're different papers, and also from different test centers as well. So that's really important to understand. And some people, for example, this last exam, they said they had no poetry at all, while others did have poetry. So there's a big giveaway there with the different types of questions that people are getting. The other kind of new development is that you can click on a question, the ACE in section 1, so it's a digital exam, right? You do it on their platform. When you click on the question, it highlights the text being referred to. So if it says, what is your interpretation of the meaning of this phrase in lines 11 to 12, you click on it and it'll highlight lines 11 to 12. So they're kind of trying to help make it easier, because it's actually quite difficult to do the exam on a screen, because you can't highlight different pieces of the text, different of the passages. And so that's kind of a way for them to try and help you, despite the actual paper getting more difficult because of, like I said, more kind of heavier abstract reasoning in section 1. For section 2, the big shift that we've seen is moving away from hot topics and moving more to kind of nuanced themes with emotional complexity to them. All right. So, for example, in March 2024, some of the themes, and again, you're going to have different themes come up for different people on different days, that because people do the section 2 paper on 2 different days in different centers, so you get different. Actually, you do it at home, so you get different types of themes across the different individuals. So there's a whole range of them. But in March 2024, some of the themes that came up, there was experts as well as risk. Then there was online communities and calmness. So 2 essays each there. Whereas in March 25, some of the themes were trust and criticism, advancement of the human race, emotional expression. And so the themes are shifting to more of that deeper emotional complexity. And so you need to be able to write about that. And in section 3, the big one that everyone kind of talks about, what we've seen and what we've heard is that there's been more kind of integration heavy, as well as graph and diagram rich questions. And what that really breaks down to is multi-step reasoning, where you have the multiple steps to try and figure out what's going on. Where, for example, you might get abstract questions where you're faced with a situation or a topic that you've never seen before. So, for example, recently in March, there was a question about ducks swimming. Right? You get the image of ducks swimming, and then you're being asked about the size of the wave that they created. Nothing you've seen before, but the concept of waves in physics is being tested, or your ability to reason and think through that is being tested. So there are, like I said, questions with multiple steps, with multiple factors to consider. The concepts themselves we found might be quite straightforward, but the complexity of thinking is where they get you. So, for example, there was a question with talking about greenhouse gases, and they had a table of different greenhouse gases from different years, from 1930 to 2020. And the questions asked you to compare different amounts. However, the different amounts were in different units. So you had to kind of think through the units, pick that up, understand the graph, pick up the units, convert the units, and then start to compare them in that way. So you're starting to build the steps of reasoning that you need to go through. Another question was about respiration, of a frog's respiration rates, involving the changing volumes and the graphs and cardiac outputs. But there was extra reasoning required to do due to the glottis and the buccal cavities of a frog. And you might be listening to this going, holy crap, I haven't learned about the buccal cavities of a frog. Well, you don't need to. That's not the point here. The point here is that in section 3 of the GAMSAT, you're going to be given all these random ass topics that you've never seen before, but it's about being able to think through it and pull it apart and use the information you're given to work out their crazy questions. And I'll talk more about this in a second, and how to actually learn those skills. So you're often presented with a lot of information, and that's what we found with this recent paper. Lots of information, lots of distractions. The key is to know what's important, what's not, and how to work through it. And they're also combining different topics. So again, it's not just about memorizing formulas and equations, because they'll give you those and then they'll mash them together. So for example, there was a question about semiconductors and optics, which are 2 topics that people might not know and might hate. But look, You might know them, great. If you don't, that's okay too. Chances are you can work it out with the right types of reasoning skills. So there are also lots of reports about genetics and blood types, questions on those coming up in the March exam. So the early signals that we're seeing for September 2025. So let me just share with you the timeline first. Okay, so this is the format of the September 2025 exam. You're first going to do the section 2 paper, which is a remote 2 essays done remotely. You're going to do them at home, at your place, on your computer with the camera on, the mic on. There's going to be a remote proctor watching. You're going to show them underneath your table around your room so your mate's not, back there giving you the answers. And you've got a test window for over 2 days from August 23rd to the 24th. Then about 2.5, 3 weeks later, you're going to do sections 1 and 3 in a specific location that's going to be given to you by ASA a couple of weeks out from the exam. And you're going to go in there, you're going to do it on their computer. Then the results come out generally in mid-November via email, via their portal. So the early signs of what we're seeing and what you can expect in September is, as I always like to say, you've got to expect the unexpected. Although we saw those changes, it could change the other way. The thing about the GAMSAT is that the past papers are often a poor reflection. Well, they're not even past papers. They're just sample papers that ASA give you. And the problem is that they're more of a sample. They're not an indication of you're going to get exactly those types of questions. And the beauty and the frustrating thing and the kind of things that causes me and my team to get obsessed about this exam is that it does evolve and change in the sense that you can't predict the types of questions that are going to come up. You can predict the skills that they're testing. You can predict the types of techniques and strategies and skills you need to develop to perform well. But for example, that question about the frog and the ducks, probably not going to come up again. Or maybe it will. Maybe they're going to they do repeat questions occasionally to try and compare the different sittings of the exam to make sure that the statistical analysis that they do is accurate. But the point here is that you've got to develop the skills to be able to face the unexpected. And so for section 1, what we can kind of start to prepare for and expect at this point is more abstract reasoning rather than narrative interpretation. So it's really important that you guys go deeper on your section 1 skills, but also be able to go back to the narratives as well. So you need to kind of breach both of those 2 aspects in section 1. In section 2, obviously, we want to dig more into those emotionally complex topics, as well as being able to talk about those hot topics, depending on what's happening in the world at the time. And for section 3, if you've got to expect the unexpected anywhere, it's here. But what's key is that multi-step reasoning to be able to work through the questions and the stimulus material they give you, to be able to manage questions on topics you've never seen before. That's the key here. So the second thing that I want to cover is where you should be right now. And that kind of leads me to that point. If you're hearing this, you're kind of thinking about September GAMSAT, or you're decided that you're going to do it, where do you need to be at this point? Because at this point, at this phase is where the illusion of progress often traps a lot of candidates. They're watching videos, they might be reviewing some notes, listening to podcasts, but they're not building the skills that are being tested. Or maybe you're not doing anything at all. You're waiting for a better time to start your GAMSAT study. So instead, you need to be developing skills. You need to be writing, reviewing, and adapting your abilities to what's required. And so this is about training, not studying. Right, that's a bit of a mindset shift you need to make with the GAMSAT. It's not about studying or memorizing. It's about training yourself to think like a GAMSAT candidate. And so I really want to give you a bit of a reality check at this point. Because if you're not building momentum at this point, if you're not starting to implement the different methods that we're talking about here, you're going to be falling behind when September comes around. Because if you're doing uni, even if you're working full-time, September can be a difficult time to do the GAMSAT because you've got mid-semester exams if you're at uni. And if you're working full-time, well, you're working full-time from now until then. So the earlier you begin So starting now as soon as possible is going to be key. And by now, you should have already done a baseline diagnostic for sections 1, 2, and 3. You should know your weak spots in each of those. And you should have a plan and starting to work on these skills and not just the content. You should be doing both. Right? And if you want some resources on how to do that, go to the show notes. We have a diagnostic test in there for sections 1 and 3. You can do that for free. It's our way of helping you along to get started so that you can catch up and be on the right path. And at this point, the most common mistakes that we see is that people wait for clarity instead of creating it. You know, you got to take those 3 steps that I just mentioned, do the diagnostics, identify your weaknesses, and have that plan and start implementing it. That's going to create the clarity on what you need to be doing, where you need to be going. Not more videos, not more watching of stuff, right? You got to start to put pen to paper or fingers to keyboard and start taking those actions. The other mistake that people make at this point is ignoring feedback and reflection, just pounding through the work. That's not what's important here. As you can see, multi-step reasoning and ACE doubling down on your thinking, not your memorizing, is going to require an ability to be able to reflect and improve on what you're doing. The other thing is focusing too heavily on content and not reasoning. So let's talk about what's working now in GAMSAT preparation, because this year we saw more rapid turnarounds than ever. And not just because people studied harder, but because our students are studying smarter with feedback, strategies, and structure. So here is the old, outdated GAMSAT study phases. The old method involved generally 3 phases of preparation, where first you begin by learning the science concepts, which generally involves memorizing formulas and definitions. And as we've seen with the development of the GAMSAT, that's not going to help. Then the second stage at that point was to do practice questions. And I think that was with an attempt to kind of build reasoning skills, but that doesn't tend to go that way. What tends to happen is people just get demotivated because they just get the questions wrong. They keep getting most of them wrong, and they're not improving. And then they think, well, I need to move to phase 3, which is timed practice exams. And at that point, that's when the panic sets in, because under exam conditions, it's just a mess. And they just avoid it, or the procrastination sets in, or fear and doubt, and people start wondering if they're good enough or smart enough. And that's not true, because it's not you, it's not these people's abilities, it's the approach that they've been taking. It's an old, ineffective approach that doesn't actually address what's being tested in the GAMSAT. Whereas what's actually working and a far more effective approach is this integrated way of studying, where you do these 3 things simultaneously, particularly for things like section 3. I'm going to use section 3 as an example here, but this applies to all 3 sections. Most people are worried about section 3, but yeah, like I said, it applies to all 3. So let's go through this. So you've got firstly the concept understanding, and the key word there is understanding, not memorizing, but learning how to think with the concepts. Because what ACE are going to do, they're just going to butcher that concept and give you this weird Frankenstein version of it. And if all you've done is memorize some formulas and definitions, that's not going to help, right? You're not going to be able to think with it. So the key is to learn to think with the concept. But at the same time, you're working on skill development through not doing practice questions, because practice questions don't develop your skills, they test them. And so if you don't have the skills before you do the questions, you're not going to have them afterwards. You're just going to feel like crap because you keep getting them wrong. So instead, the key here is very focused drills and exercises on those skills. Just like in any sport that you would do drills. Like if you're doing tennis, you practice your backhand over and over again. Same thing here, you pick a skill and focus and hone in on that. And then the third component is having milestones, which are focused, regular consolidation sessions to bring the concepts and skills together. And that way you're developing what's being tested throughout your study so that you go in as prepared as possible. Now, by the way, I'm showing a few things on the screen here. So if you're listening through the audio channels, you can go to the show notes, and I have we've uploaded the images, and you can also watch on YouTube if you'd like. Now, let's talk specifically about what this integrated approach looks like for each section. What we've seen is working. Now, obviously, this is being recorded before the March GAMSAT results have been released. So we don't know the actual results of our students implementing this on the GAMSAT, but we know from our internal testing that we do regularly with our students, we know what's been working for them, and this is it. So for section 1, it's more active reading and reasoning games. So what I like to refer to as reasoning over reading approach is having a huge impact in section 1, where you're not just reading widely, whatever the hell that means, but you're actually actively implementing that abstract reasoning methodology. For section 2 is our 4P method, or what I've started to call the 4P method for essay writing, which involves the 4Ps: prompt decoding, position, your position on the statement or the theme, paragraph flow, and a personal layer. And we found that this is working really good, especially for nurses, because you can include your clinical experiences. So we're kind of integrating that deeper emotional complexity as we go. And for section 3, well, it's been about targeted backwards practice and skill development. And that way you're actually focusing on the right skills and you're actually be able to perform on the day of the exam. So we know the type of questions and before you start worrying about the topics. And that's why it's important to do that diagnostic test. Again, you can get it for free now in the show notes. Because if you start your preparation by just getting a list of science topics and reading and studying them or reviewing your uni notes, well, that's not actually going to be useful for the GAMSAT. We need to kind of work backwards in the sense that we understand what the types of questions are. We do a diagnostic process to figure out what the skills you're missing are, what some of the topic understanding is, and then start working on that. That is a far more effective way. So what are we doing at ThankFlip to help you win in September, in the September 2025 exam? Well, we've built our whole system around one thing: helping nurses and career changers succeed. Now, this isn't some uni-style cram session. It's precision coaching for people who don't have time to waste. So specifically for section 1, because it's shifting, as we've mentioned, the passages are becoming more abstract, more interpretive, and honestly more challenging. And that's why we have a literature PhD to teach you how to confidently handle the kind of abstract reasoning that's now more common. Ryan has been part of our team for a few years now, so you're still getting the foundations of GAMSAT style literature analysis, but now you'll also learn how to unpack complex text with nuance and precision. So we deliver this through video lessons, targeted practice questions, and online classes, live classes that we then record and upload for those who are working at the time. And they're all guided by our PhD mentor, step-by-step guiding you through the process. And you can also have one-on-one tutoring sessions with our team. And for section 2, we're doubling down on helping you write fast, insightful essays on topics that are becoming more emotionally and philosophically complex. So we've added 2 specialist tutors to our team, each with years of experience coaching students through high-stakes writing, specifically the GAMSAT. They're joining our already talented team to sharpen your structure, strengthen your ideas, and help you write content on a deeper level around those 4 Ps that I mentioned. And so you'll get access to their insights on online workshops, which obviously we record and upload. We do essay feedback. We have video tutorials. We have sample other essays and a whole bunch of other things as well. For section 3, this isn't just about knowing the facts or knowing, GAMSAT science knowledge anymore. It's about reasoning with them as you learn. And so instead of the old method of learn the content or memorize the content, then do practice questions, then timed exams, which is slow and ineffective, we're changing the game. And so here's what we're doing. You'll use our GAMSAT Science Bridging course to learn the content and be able to understand and work and think with it. At the same time, you'll join our Science Acceleration classes where we teach you how to think and reason the way Section 3 requires these days. And to make sure that all of that sticks, we've built in milestones, which are checkpoints where you apply what you've learned in real GAMSAT style environments, combining reasoning and knowledge, and then a debrief session, a check-in, a drop-in session with our team to help you to integrate all of that learning and break through any barriers that you're having. And so that is how we are helping you for September GAMSAT. That's what's been working. It's an integrated, effective, and strategic approach. Now, if you've done the GAMSAT and you're thinking about the next step, what happens afterwards, we have you covered as well. So CASPA is a big thing that's come up in the last couple of years, specifically for the University of Notre Dame and Wollongong, which are quite popular these days. And so CASPA is an online situational judgment test. I won't go into the details of that because we're going to have more on that coming up in this season. But just to show you or explain how we're helping you with this, we're about to launch what we believe is the most helpful and useful GAMSAT training program available. So not GAMSAT, CASPA training program available. So it's led by expert CASPA tutors who have been doing this for a number of years now, covering everything that you need to know in terms of what to expect on the day, what kind of structure, how to structure your responses, how to handle ethical dilemmas with clarity and professionalism, and how to increase those skills of being able to answer the types of CASPA questions that you get. So we have video training on that, as well as 3 mock exams with detailed solutions so that you know where you went well and what you need to improve, as well as a CASPA questions bank so that you can practice and improve. Plus, what I think takes this to the next level is we're running live CASPA mini mocks, which are live interactive sessions where you jump online and you're able to practice your responses live in the video format and get feedback, and you learn from other people doing it as well so that your skills go so much higher. And we found that the way that we structure these, what we've done over the years with the interviews, which we're kind of applying into here, has been a game changer for our students. And that's coming out shortly. So just follow us here on the podcast or on the emails, and we'll let you know once that's been released. Now, we've also got our applications boot camp. So this is for you if you're like, all right, I've got my GAMSAT score. Now what? The applications are closing in a couple of weeks. What do I do? So we remove all the ambiguity and give you a clear strategy to maximize your chances of actually getting an interview. So we show you how to rank your preferences, because that's super important for the GEMSAT schools. Even if you have borderline scores, or especially if you have borderline scores, we show you how to rank your preferences to maximize your chances of actually getting an interview. We show you the common pitfalls and how to avoid them, and how to make the system work for you. We guide you through a stepwise training program plus live Q&As to make sure that your applications are honed in. And so if you're confused about the cutoffs, the thresholds, if your background is appropriate for which medical school, that's what we help you with in the applications bootcamp. And then in the interview bootcamp, this is one of my favorites. Now, I used to actually sit on the panel for the medical schools doing the interviews. I've kind of overseen the development of our interview program, which has honestly been an incredible success. I am a bit biased, obviously, but just to let you know, last year, from the boot campers who got interviews and did our interview bootcamp, 100% of them got in to their medical school of choice. Or a medical school. Now, some of them got two or three offers from medical schools. One of them was a record, got 3 offers. We got multiple. Actually, 2 people got offers from 3 medical schools. A couple got 2, and everybody else got an offer from 1. So that was a great result, and we're hoping to, in fact, not just repeat that, but take it to the next level. What I think is really good about our interview program are what we call our live mini mocks, regular mini mocks, kind of like what we're doing with the CASPA test, where we meet up a couple times a week and we do drills and exercises live on your interview answers, where you get live feedback from our team, and you hear everybody else. And so by doing that, that's one of the kind of the secrets to our success, which is no longer a secret because I'm giving it away here. But we're also introducing a whole bunch of actual mock interviews and new tutors to help us along. So it's going to be fantastic. But so at this point, if you're waiting for the perfect time to start your September GAMSAT preparation, this is it. There are 4 solid months between now and September. So that's enough time to make the kind of gains that change your future. But only if you commit fully, deliberately, and with the right support. And we're here to guide you, train you, and back you. Because if you're not just, because the thing about this is you're not just studying for an exam, right? You're preparing for a future in medicine that's going to change lives, including your own. So welcome to season 2 of the Nurses Doing GAMSAT podcast. Let's get to work, get your diagnostic done, start your sprint now. Head on over to the show notes in the description or go to thankflipgamsat.com/episode 15 and take the next step. Don't wait for motivation. Instead, build momentum. And I'll see you next time.